Hi, and welcome to the 300th episode of About the Authors TV. I'm your host, Jake Brown. Time magazine once mused that James Patterson is the world's greatest bestseller factory, and that while literature is not a democracy, if it was, Patterson would be president for life of the literary universe. National Public Radio, in a similar head-shaking moment as they surveyed his catalog, posited that if you read a thriller recently, there's a good chance that it was written by James Patterson. 1 in 5 adult thriller hardcovers sold these days carry his name on the cover. While Newsweek has correctly crowned him as one of America's most famous novelists, and Vanity Fair in a cover story celebrated the author as an impresario of the global thriller industry, Patterson has proved that his readers have insatiable appetites. He's produced a slew of book detective series, standalone romances, illustrated novels for young adults, and for middle school readers across a sea of genres. Perhaps no other author in literary history has more seamlessly melded commerce and creepiness to create an international brand, one that has transformed a wide swath of the publishing industry. While Newsweek has correctly crowned him as one of America's most famous novelists, and Vanity Fair in a cover story celebrated the author as an impresario of the global thriller industry, Patterson has proved that his readers have insatiable appetites. He's produced a slew of books, detective series, standalone romances, illustrated novels for young adults, and for middle school readers across a sea of genres. Perhaps no other author in literary history has more seamlessly melded commerce and creepiness to create an international brand, one that has transformed a wide swath of the publishing industry. Long read and revered by peers, legendary Jack Reacher creator Lee Child has pointed out that behind all the noise and all the numbers, we shouldn't forget that no one gets this big without amazing natural storytelling talent, which James Patterson has in spades. While Washington Post senior editor and legendary Watergate reporter Bob Woodward has argued that he's the best-selling fiction author of all time for a reason. And with 100-plus New York Times bestsellers to back that distinction, Gentleman's Quarterly has quipped that he's long forgotten the number he hit during his most prolific single year. USA Today, in doubling down on his literary phenomena, has concluded that the man is a master of his genre. Any thriller fan knows James Patterson is a megalith of fiction writing. His crime and suspense thrillers, love stories, nonfiction, middle grade and young adult novels have all been #1 bestsellers, and he writes a dozen books a year. Beginning his singular career with the release of his first of a couple hundred books back in 1976 with the Thomas Berryman number, which won the Edgar Award for Best First Mystery, and followed with other early hits like Season of the Machete in 1977. See How They Run, also released as The Jericho Commandment in 1979. Virgin also published as Cradle and All in 1980. The Black Market, also known as Black Friday in 1986, and The Midnight Club in 1989, along with the duology When the Wind Blows, over the self-titled debut in The Lake House. CBS News affirmed as the 1990s kicked off that the words writer's block aren't in Patterson's vocabulary, inventing arguably among the most famed characters ever to grace the page in crime fiction with the now mythic Alex Cross in Along Came a Spider in 1993, where CBS spotlighted importantly that it was Patterson's breakout book. The novel spawned a franchise that produced 20 sequels and 3 films, made world famous on movie screens by Morgan Freeman, with People magazine calling Cross a most compelling hero, as he's remained in the hearts of fans over a franchise that features decades of worldwide best-selling sequels like Kiss the Girls, Jack and Jill, Cat and Mouse, Pop Goes the Weasel, Roses Are Red, Violets Are Blue, Four Blind Mice, The Big Bad Wolf, London Bridges, Mary Mary, Cross, known overseas as Alex Cross, Double Cross, Cross Country, Alex Cross's Trial, I, Alex Cross, Crossfire, Kill Alex Cross, Merry Christmas Alex Cross, Alex Cross Run, Cross My Heart, Hope to Die, Cross Justice, Cross the Line, The People vs. Alex Cross, Target Alex Cross, Crisscross, Deadly Cross, Fear No Evil, Triple Cross, and Cross Down more recently, along with the successful spin-off series starring his daughter Alexis Cross in Alley Cross, Like Father Like Son, and The Secret Detective. The New York Times, in a 2010 cover story aptly titled James Patterson, Inc., took measure of the sheer library of works the Wonderkind with Words had produced and the impact they'd already had on generations of readers and writers, reporting that last year, an estimated 14 million copies of his books in 38 different languages found their way onto beach blankets, airplanes, and nightstands around the world. There are many different ways to catalog Patterson's staggering success. Here are just a few. Since 2006, 1 out of every 17 novels bought in the United States was written by James Patterson. He's listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the author with the most New York Times bestsellers. And according to Forbes magazine, Patterson earned Hachette about $500 million over the last 2 years. Patterson's vision of a limitless empire forced Little Brown to reorder its priorities. Indeed, as that universe expanded exponentially as Patterson began opening his creative world to collaborators, lifting many from obscurity to the bestseller list overnight. The Hollywood Reporter as all of these series and more to follow became household hits and permanent additions to millions' home and digital libraries, broke the news that the author has signed an exclusive first look pact with Skydance Television, under which he'll adapt a number of books for the studio, including The Woman's Murder Club, the Private series, Jane Smith, Holmes, Miss Marple and Poe, and the Michael Bennett series. One of the most popular detective series of all time, with approximately 50 million copies sold. The series followed NYPD detective Michael Bennett as he solves crimes and raises his 10 adopted children. With more than 200 novels in print over the past 5 decades, holding the New York Times record for the most #1 bestsellers by a single author, it's been estimated at times that Patterson's output accounts for 1 in 17 of all hardcover books sold in the US and over 425 million copies and counting around the world. His standalone works could also have their own library wing over popular solo novels like Hide and Seek, Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas, Sam's Letters to Jennifer, and a generous catalog of collaborations. And then, speaking of presidential collaborators, co-writing several bestsellers with former President Bill Clinton over The President's Missing and The President's Daughter. While Entertainment Weekly broke the news that Patterson recently released a novel, Run Rose Run, co-authored with country music legend Dolly Parton. The thriller debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and will be adapted into a film starring and produced by Parton. And we are so excited that this true literary lion that I, like so many millions, have been reading for decades joins us. Mr. Patterson, it is a true honor. Welcome to the show. Growing up, we understand you began displaying your one-of-a-kind storytelling gift early. Had you already decided at a time where other kids wanted to be cops or astronauts that you wanted to grow up to be a storyteller?
It's a mixed bag for me. When I was a little kid, I didn't write stories. We lived out in the woods in upstate New York, and I spent a lot of time by myself as a little kid, and I used to make up stories. I'd roam through the woods. We had a big stream, and it was nice. I mean, I wasn't afraid, but I would make up stories.
You'd attend Manhattan College and then Vanderbilt University right here in our hometown in Nashville, Tennessee. Reflecting on it now, any professors or even earlier back, high school teachers who recognize your talent, who then encourage you along in its development?
My grandmother was a big deal for me. My grandmother, went through the 8th grade. That was her education. My grandfather in the 6th grade. They're both very smart, resourceful. And my grandmother, basically, her point of view was, James, you can do whatever you want to do, except you're not going to play in the NBA because you're not quick enough. So stop. Stop that dream. Now, don't stop it, but it's not going to wind up at the NBA, with me playing basketball. But anything else, she said, you can do it. And, and nobody, I wouldn't say people applauded when I said I want to write novels, but nobody got in the way. So I think they thought it was a little goofy, but okay. Yeah. And I tend to figure stuff out. And I eventually figured out how to, whatever talent I had, how to write a novel that people would want to read, or novels that people would want to read. I went to Vanderbilt for graduate school, and another person that helped down there, Walter Sullivan was the guy who taught writing there, and I took his course both semesters, and he really encouraged me. He said, "You have it. You have whatever the hell it is," and that was useful for me to hear that.
Vanity Fair, in a cover story some years back, described your very interesting summer job in between college semesters, where Patterson worked on the overnight shift at McLean Hospital, the renowned psychiatric institution in suburban Belmont, to help pay his bills. He began digging into highbrow literature, James Joyce and Jean Genet, to pass the long, quiet shift. Were you by then already doing any original fiction writing of your own?
In high school, I was a good student, but I didn't like the books that they gave us, which is tragic. To give kids books that they're gonna turn them off on reading, which is so I didn't read that much in high school, other than what we were assigned to read. I worked my way through college at a mental hospital. And I worked a lot of night shifts, and I started reading like crazy, and it was all pretty serious stuff. At that point, I was kind of a literary snob, but that's what really turned me on. When I could go into bookstores and just pick up the stuff I wanted to read versus the stuff that they were handing us in Catholic high school in upstate New York, St. Patrick's.
Did the root idea for the Thomas Berryman number about a Nashville newspaper reporter's murder trial come from an actual case that was perhaps in the headlines while you were attending Vanderbilt?
I went back to New York. This was during Vietnam. I decided I was going to try to write a mystery. As I said, I had been a literary snob, but along the way, I read a couple of popular novels, Day of the Jackal and The Exorcist, and I went, these are cool. and I might be able to do something like this, maybe. I'm not going to be able to do 100 Years of Solitude. I'm not quite that good, but maybe I can do, a thriller that people will want to read. And so I sat down, I started writing the Thomas Berryman number. I wrote the Thomas Berryman number, early in the morning and late at night. And, I was very lucky I got it published. I was at that point 26, I think.
After seeing your name on hundreds of book covers and translations over the years, does it still get as exciting for you nowadays when you see a new one?
Yeah, it's still and not so much seeing my name on the cover, but it's still very exciting. Somebody said you're lucky if you find something you like to do, and then it's a miracle if somebody will pay to do it. And that's my deal.
Viewers may or may not know as you've been at this for decades now, but for about the first 20 years in tandem with the publication of your first 5 or 6 books, you were making a living with words working for advertising giant J. Walter Thompson, with highlights including your coming up with the household commercial jingle, "I'm a Toys R Us kid." In what ways do you feel, looking back on it now, that working in advertising aided you in your career as a novelist? From understanding the dynamics of marketing a book to the wide audience to any more specific considerations like story or even book covers, which you stayed very involved with, versus other authors who prefer to stay hands-off with those aspects once they've handed a book in.
How to get a job, got a job in advertising. So during the day, I would, write ads. The most famous was Toys R Us kid. I'm a Toys R Us kid. I'll give you the secret to advertising. When I was at J. Walter Thompson, and they would bring all the first year people in, created all of them, and I'd say, look, I'm going to tell you the secret to making $1 million a year in advertising. Very simple thing. And I stood up there and I had a cream pie in one hand. This is in the autobiography, but I had a cream pie, and I said, I just pointed to somebody. I said, come on up here. So then they would stand there and I'd have the cream pie in my hand, and I'd be looking at the person next to me. And then I gave them the cream pie and I go, hit me. And they would hit me in the face with the cream pie. And I said, this is the whole secret of advertising. There's nothing but this. Hit them in the face with the cream pie, and while you have their attention, say something smart. That's it. There's nothing else. No cream pie, nobody noticed it. You'll have commercials that go out there that 70% of the people noticed it. You'll have commercials that go out there that less than 1% of the people. If they don't notice it, obviously nothing happens. Then you have to say, if your commercial runs and there's no change, the commercial is useless. So you have to say something smart. Like with the book, what are you going to say about it that, where people go, "Ooh, okay, yeah, I noticed it, and yeah, I want to read that. I want to read that book."
Now, the New York Times has mused that if there really were true human superheroes, Alex Cross would be at the head of the class. And for fans around the world of this truly iconic mainstay figure in crime fiction, when did you first conjure up Alex Cross, a widowed, jazz-playing African-American forensic psychologist / DC detective? And is it true that the original Alex Cross was in fact a female detective named Alexis?
Alex was a woman for, I don't remember how many pages, 40 or 50 pages. And I just didn't feel comfortable with that particular book. I have written with women protagonists, a women's murder club, etc. But I didn't feel comfortable there. It just felt like it wasn't working. And then when I turned it to Alex, suddenly it started. The voice was right. The voice, it began to work. In Along Came a Spider, which was the first one, he used to sign his name with a cross. It's a cool name, Alex Cross.
People magazine has crowned Alex Cross a most compelling hero, and he's as sophisticated a crime fighter, no doubt in part his famed dual profession as both law enforcement officer and forensic psychologist. Were you acquainted socially or through book research by then with any law enforcement professionals that might have included forensic psychologists or homicide cops? And why did that specific specialty feel like the best fit to you?
I wanted him to be more than just a street cop. And the idea of a guy, in fact, that's why Morgan Freeman took the role. because Alex doesn't I mean, he can, if need be, he can fight, but he's not a fighter. That's not his nature. And his nature is to solve things with his head, and that was what attracted Morgan to the role.
Now, I went to high school in the District of Columbia area, spent many nights down there, and know the city well, and it is the perfect place to set a book series in. Why did you feel like Washington, D.C. was the right geographical backdrop to set this one in?
I just make the joke about some of these guys. I can't remember. There's a writer that writes in a small town in New Mexico, and I keep thinking like pretty soon he'll have killed everybody in the town. But the great thing about Washington is there's so many interesting things that happen there. You got the police department, you have the city itself, the FBI, DEA. I mean, there's so many things. There's so many possibilities for crime, murders, sociology, a lot, psychology, etc. So I just found it to be a really interesting place to set a series.
Many inside the industry have argued that along with its unforgettable characters and story that you couldn't put down page to page, that the smash breakout success of Along Came a Spider was due in part to your tapping into that marketing and advertising expertise and savvy to actually produce your own TV commercial for the book. How early on did this breakout idea first hit you?
The first one I ever did, it took like 5 minutes to write it and 10 minutes to produce.
Kiss the Girls remains one of the most chilling cases in the Alex Cross catalog, in large part not only because of the gentleman caller and Casanova killers, but equally because of the character of the North Carolina woods and the Underground Railroad bunker he's keeping them imprisoned in. What's drawn you to sending Alex out to adapt his unique crime-solving skill set to work beyond Washington, D.C.?
I took him to Africa once. Yeah, and he's been down south a couple times. He went to Florida once. But yeah, that's a fun thing to get him out of a fish out of water kind of thing. He's been out west in the most recent ones. Get him out in the snow. Had him on a boat canoe trip with Sampson on one. That was kind of fun. The other one of them knew what the hell they were doing out in the canoe. So yeah, it was good.
The Washington Post has deconstructed Alex Cross as the iconic Metro police detective who's a thoroughly believable everyman, husband, and father, and his humanity is underlined at every turn. Underneath the fast and furious action, Patterson is exploring what it means to be a father, a man, and ultimately a human being in an increasingly complex and dangerous world. And indeed at heart, beyond catching the bad guy booking it out, he seems to draw his greatest heroism for caring for and protecting his family. Whether we're talking about Nana Mama or his children, Damon Janelle, Alex Jr., Ava or her mother, Christine Johnson, or detective and eventual wife, Brianna Stone, among others. Who remained closest to your heart as creator, and whose interpersonal partnerships did you most enjoy featuring? Say even the brotherhood between Alex Cross and his partner, Detective John Sampson.
That's a big part of the attraction. You do get it, people are tied into the family. I've been warned the cat must never die. Nana Mama must never die. But you do, or I did, really get a feeling for how that camaraderie is the biggest thing. What drives them through? What gives them purpose? Well, one, they want to live. Two, they want the people around them to live. So, which gets back to your point about Sampson and Cross. It's dangerous out there. And that's one of the things that people need to recognize more about police. And, clearly, yes, some things go wrong and they do. And that shouldn't, one of the things about, nobody hates bad cops more than good cops. But things do happen. They're out there with guns, and it's dangerous. You go, and I've been on, a dozen or so ride-alongs, but you're out there and it's 2 a.m. and there's a call and you got to go up 3 flights of stairs in a dark building to deal with supposedly a domestic dispute. And you know that 70% of the people in your town own guns. That's dangerous. And people can't handle it. Well, that's their job. No, screw you. It's nobody's job to do that. And you need to understand how hard that is. And how anybody who's ever gone through, they do these with police in terms of training them, but sometimes they'll let I've done it, civilians, where somebody's going to pop out and you have to make that split-second decision. Do you pull your gun? Do you shoot the person? And invariably, you'll shoot somebody's grandmother or something, and you realize this is your life, and it is hard, and people are going to make some mistakes. And sometimes it's not mistakes. Somebody's running away and they haven't done anything major, and you shoot somebody in the back, That doesn't work. But sometimes accidents are going to happen.
As with Along Came a Spider and Kiss the Girls, as the Alex Cross case files expanded over hit sequels like Jack and Jill, Cat and Mouse with Gary Sanji's escape, Pop Goes the Weasel, Roses Are Red, the vampire-style murders to solve and Violets Are Blue, Four Blind Mice or the Big Bad Wolf, Time magazine focused in on the establishment of the popular Patterson style, which dispenses with any flowery bits or extraneous details. A typical Patterson novel might have 150 chapters, but each one is just 2 or 3 pages long. His paragraphs are short too, often just 1 or 2 sentences. It's an approach that emphasizes action over style and pace over everything. Please elaborate in your own words on why you feel this style has suited your preferred method of thriller writing over the course of the series and your broader catalog.
It was a bit of an accident, and it pretty much happened with the Alex Cross. And what happened with that is I said, okay, I've written some books. They're okay. I think I can do better. I'm more comfortable writing first person, but I kind of like to mix, and I'll write first person and third person in the same book, where here's Alex Cross and it's 2 first person chapters. And then we're going to do a chapter with the killer and it's going to be third person or whatever, whoever, Um, but when I sat down to write the first Alex Cross, I said, I really I'm going to do this right. And I wrote a 300 and some page outline. Okay. And I went over and I went, this is the book. Not the whole book, but I mean, this is basically it. And it was a lot of short chapters, and there was no messing around. And it was a freight train from beginning to end. And I mean, I went from 300 to maybe 400 and some pages, but that was the book. And it would be terrible if everybody wrote that way, but it's useful for a lot of people, and people find it rewarding. Oh, I read it 2 chapters. Whoa, oh, I finished a chapter. It's cool, and then getting into the point where at the end of the chapter, and this happens a lot of times in the movies or when you're watching a streamer, and the show's over the 50 minutes, but they ended on something. You go, don't, no, don't, no, don't stop there. I need to see the next scene. And that's one of the things, for some of the chapters, you want them to keep going, like, oh, I got to read another chapter. Oh, I got to read another chapter. And it's just a fun way to tell stories.
Boy, did that strategy work out. As you continue to evolve Alex Cross's character through new titles like London Bridges, Mary Mary, Cross, which for instance found him working as a private psychologist retired from both the DC Police and then FBI, Double Cross, Cross Country, Alex Cross's Trial, I, Alex Cross, and Crossfire, which finds Alex marrying Bree, and then returning to the DC Police by the time of Kill Alex Cross. How had you decided to age him, and how well do you feel like you'd gotten to know him by then? Did you hear him speak in a certain voice, for instance, or could you see what he looked like in your imagination?
I don't make the mistake that Michael Connelly made. And I told Mike this, we're friendly, and but every book that came out, he aged Bosch a year. I said, Mike, just because the book is coming out a year later, I learned this from John D. McDonald, famous writer from Travis McGee. He would write a book, and the next year the book would come out, and the character would be like, it'd be 2 weeks later. I'm not aging now. I mean, this is, I don't know how many we've done now, 25 or whatever the heck it is. But Alex has not aged that way. So I learned that, and Michael didn't. So Bosch is like 102 years old now.
The Today Show once spotlighted the reality that Patterson's books don't pussyfoot around when it comes to villains. These are bad, bad people. And you've definitely faced Alex Cross over some truly frightening antagonists over the years. From Gary Sanji to assassin Jimmy Hatz Galati, who kills his wife, to the Wolf, to Kyle Craig, aka the Mastermind, the Tiger, DCAK, aka DC Audience Killer, and Joffrey Schaefer, aka the Weasel. How did you endeavor to distinguish these bad guys one from the other, while keeping them all equally as dangerous a threat to Cross? And do these characters have to scare you first to know they're going to send the same chills down readers' spines?
You got to be interested in the villain, and the villain, for me, and this is what will turn me on or turn me off about certain books. If the villain isn't in some way a worthy opponent for it's not as interesting for me anyway. Usually. John Sanford, who I think is really good. That's not his real name, but yeah. He somehow manages to make kind of dopey people interesting villains, but that's rare. And And it's more accurate in terms of the crime world, but it's a lot more interesting when the villain is worthy of Alex, and you don't know how, or Alex or the Women's Murder Club, you don't know how they're going to possibly solve this because the villain is watches his or her butt.
The Romantic Times even got swept away in the Alex Cross series like millions of others. Observing that as the series continued into new generations, Patterson's writing style never disappoints, with his characters still seeming fresh even more than 20 novels in. No story is the same, and the books are as worthy a read as all the ones before them. And we see that captured in Merry Christmas, Alex Cross, Cross My Heart, Hope to Die, Cross Justice, Cross the Line, Alex Cross Run, The People vs. Alex Cross, Target Alex Cross, Crisscross, Deadly Cross, Fear No Evil, Triple Cross, the spin-off trilogy starring his daughter in Ally Cross, Like Father Like Son and The Secret Detective, and the latest Alex Cross solo novels, Cross Down and Cross Out. After living with a character like this one for as long as you have, do you come to consider it by now like a reunion with an old friend whenever you sit down to write a new one?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Not as friends, but as, yeah, I don't know how to really describe it. I wouldn't say friends, but yes, absolutely know them, care about them. And if I'm writing a scene and I'm not feeling it, I don't think the reader will feel it.
Vanity Fair reported in their cover profile that after you built the Cross franchise into a successful series, you then branched out into standalone books, and in 1996 proposed trying something more radical, publishing multiple titles a year. Your publisher Little Brown objected, fearing that Patterson would diminish his overall sales, but he prevailed and sales soared. And boy did they as you entered this new era of your incredible catalog when you began co-writing series you launched in the later 90s and early 2000s with a number of co-writers. Out of curiosity, what has to grab you about a prospective author's style, originality, and onward to interest you in potentially working with them?
If it's somebody I'm going to work with on a regular, it's primarily that I feel they can write scenes because I'm going to write an outline. And I want them to contribute for two reasons. One, I want their ideas. And secondly, I want them emotionally involved. And the minute they throw a couple of ideas in, they are now emotionally involved. If they throw in two ideas, I give them a 60-page outline, they throw in two ideas, they'll go, now it works. I go, okay. But that's important that they feel attached to the thing.
It must feel rewarding, along with the creative enjoyment of co-writing together, to know that the finished product is likely to raise that author's profile, and even more likely to provide them a longer shelf life, with their solo works by extension as an added bonus.
Yeah, the money is a big part of it. No, that's nice. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, of course, it's a good thing, and you want them to you want them to have a good time doing it. And I've never had any fights with the authors, really. It's people just go, like, didn't you and the president have fights, or no? And no, I've never. When I did a book with Lisa Marklund, who's one of the most successful writers from Sweden. And we did, you do here, you're lucky if you get an interview. Here, we got an interview. Yay. Over there, we did a book. There were 46 interviews. I went over to Stockholm and, they got like 8 million people and they have million copy sellers there with 8 million people in the country. Like everybody, gas stations, they sell, it's ridiculous. But in the interviews, they asked a lot of interesting questions, but they were all like, how could an American and a Swede ever get along? This is so crazy. It didn't work with Volvo or whatever the hell. And Saab. And we both said, one, we had respect for one another's writing. And secondly, and this is the most important, we listen.
Your outlining blueprint is the stuff of literary lore. From Masterclass.com's declaration at the top of a how-to course that your secret weapon is a comprehensive outline, to the New Yorker doubling down that you instruct writers from would-be novelists to elementary school children composing book reports to outline. Please pull the curtain back on why the outlines remained a core bedrock your stories are built on and loyally book in and out. Why have you found that sticking to this creative custom has worked for you so prolifically over hundreds of best-selling creative results?
Everybody's got to figure out their own thing. If you're trying to write Finnegan's Wake, probably no outline. Ulysses, no outline, probably. I don't know. You'd have to check with James Joyce. For me, and I think for most writers, an outline is really useful. It'll save you so much time and effort and pain and suffering. And my outlines generally will take me a month, and I'll do 6 or 7 versions of the outline, and I just keep making it tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And it tends to be scenes, but it's a lot easier to sit there and look at, what begins at maybe a 30-page outline and redo it, as opposed to a book where you get halfway through the book and go, it's not working. Oh boy, and you've invested half a year or whatever. That's really painful. If you have an outline, chances are, if you're honest with yourself, the outline, people should read the outline and go, this is great. This is cool. I just read that 60-page outline. I don't even know if I want to read the book. The outline is, because it's all there. I mean, the ideas are there.
It must warm your heart when younger fans tell you that your books got them excited about reading for the first time.
It's great. The other thing about it, which has happened hundreds and hundreds of times, parents have come up and said, you got my kid reading, which is even bigger. And sometimes they'll have tears in their eyes, because it's obviously very disturbing when a kid won't read or can't read very well, and they're falling behind in school, and you're like, oh my God, because you want your kid to do fine. You want them to have a good life.
Yeah.
And if they're not reading or can't read very well, it's not a good start. I mean, kids get past it, but it's not the way you want it to go.
You ventured back down to Tennessee in your recent return to fiction, collaborating with none other than country music legend Dolly Parton on her first fiction title, Run Rose Run, which came complete with an album inspired by the book that hit #1 on the U.S. Billboard Top Country Albums chart, the U.S. Folk Albums chart, and the U.S. Top Bluegrass Albums chart. And CBS News quipped when the first book was released that it might seem an odd pairing at first. The girl from the Great Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee, who became one of the queens of country music, teaming up with a former Manhattan ad executive turned bookworm who's barely touched a guitar in his life. How harmonious was this unique co-writing dynamic, putting together a storyteller and song and novelist to create this latest bestseller?
Dolly Parton, and we did a novel together, Run Rose Run. So we become good friends, which is nice. Dolly's like me. Dolly's a workhorse. We got together, shot the breeze about an outline. I got back 2 days later, she sent me notes on the outline, and she had written 7 songs. I mean, if you can believe it.
Your teaming with President Clinton must have felt like a totally different realm of royalty to be writing within, especially in terms of the source material. He must have been full of stories from the start. What kind of a hands-on co-writer did you discover President Clinton to be during the writing of The President's Missing, which the New York Times praised for its presidential candor, while the Wall Street Journal called it harrowing, and The Economist promised that the plot is epic, while the New Yorker drove home your success in creating a twist or two of which Frederick Forsyth might be proud, while you two then returned with a follow-up New York Times bestseller in The President's Daughter. What do you enjoy about co-creating the balance of fiction with what longtime fan Time impressively noted was the author's decision to resist pure escapism? The pleasure of this book is in imagining the wild tales President Clinton might disclose about his own presidency, if he only could.
With Dolly and President Clinton, a piece of it is just in addition to whatever they can, and they're both very, very, very smart. But a piece of it is the expertise, the credibility, you can write about presidents, and most people do it pretty badly. But if you have a president who would go, oh, that wouldn't happen that way. I mean, I just was talking to the president recently. We're doing another book together. And he said, you got a grandfather clock in that room in the White House. He said, if you had a grandfather clock in that room, there wouldn't be room for a chair. That's how small that room. Yeah, that's little stuff. But bigger things are like how the Secret Service would react under a circumstance, what would happen if there was, incredible emergency, as there is in the first book we did together, where somebody is threatening to take over the grid. What would happen? Really, what would happen? And he can really lay out in a very believable way, and he's a good writer, and so it was great.
The Hollywood Reporter broke the news in 2022 that Amazon is developing another TV project based on a best-selling series of books. The streamer's teaming with Paramount Television Studios and Skydance Television for a drama based on James Patterson's Alex Cross novels. It must just be thrilling on an entirely different level as a creator and entertainer of audiences to see these characters standing the test of time as they're introduced to whole new generations of readers and viewers.
We have a new Alex. I think it's in the spring on Amazon, Aldous Hodge, and he's really good. He's a more of a hunk Alex, though. He's really good at it, but he's very, not that Morgan isn't a good looking guy, but Aldous is a really good looking guy, and it's good. I must say you get a little scared, but I think they did a great job. I've seen the first episodes are all done, thank God, because the strike would have screwed it all up. And one of the reasons that this writers' strike is going on is writers have been pissed off for a long time out there because a lot of them are at the bottom of the heap. They don't listen to them. They don't respect them the way they ought to. The culture is it's not good for writers. People say, "What are you going to write the screenplay?" No effing way. I'm not writing any screenplay. I'm not going to go to work for 60 maniacs. Like I'm supposed to write a screenplay and then everybody and their brother gets to, put in their 2 cents worth. No, thank you very much. I don't need that. I have a nice relationship with Skydance, the studio out there, and they're involved with the Cross series. And I was talking to the owner, and he said, "What else you got?" And I said, "Well, I got the Women's Murder Club." He said, "Oh, my wife loves those. We're going to develop that." What else? I said, "Well, you should just buy this one on the title." And I said, "It's modern day, and the title is Holmes, Miss Marple, and Poe." And he said, "I'm not buying it on the title, but tell me a little bit more." I told him about 5 minutes about it, and he bought it. So that's coming in January. It's modern day. It's Holmes, Miss Marple, and Poe. So in theory, you got the three greatest minds in the murder business, and they're back, and that's kind of fun. It's modern day, and they have the talents of the, and then you have to sort of discover, okay, who are they? How did this all happen, and all that stuff. So that's fun in January.
Brand new books with your name on the spine as writer or co-writer seem to populate bookshelves almost every month, it feels like. But you spotlighted your recent co-writing adventure with Mike Lepica, who you previously co-wrote The House of Wolves and The Horseman with before writing your latest 12 Months to Live, as among your favorites. Please give us a sense of what you most enjoy about working together.
I have a new book coming out now, 12 Months to Live, which I actually think is the best book I've ever done with Mike Lupica. So that's kind of cool. To me, the most exciting relationship now is this one with Mike Lupica. I mentioned, 12 Months to Live, which is the book that's coming out in September. I think it's the best character I've done, including Alex Cross, Jane Smith. The original title was Jane Effing Smith. And because that's what she is. She's just a total piece of work. She, briefly was an NYPD, then worked her way through law school as a private investigator. So she's done it all. And now she's a defense attorney, has a case with a really despicable guy on Long Island, but it's an interesting murder case. And the dialogue is we actually we already sold it to the movies and stuff. We have an Academy. I can't say who the people are. We have Academy Award winning actress who's attached. And Michael J. Kelly's attached, and one of the writers from Ozark's attached. And you usually don't get that early. And now, of course, the strikes have to end or whatever. And that's just because the character is so good. And with Mike, I mean, Mike has become a really good friend too. We're back and forth every day. It's a little like being in a writer's room where we have the humor that goes back and forth and the kind of honesty and whatever the hell it is, and we don't fight about shit. So good. But that's definitely one for people that are watching. It's like Truman Capote says, a boy's got to sell his books. One of the interesting things about 12 Months to Live, the line on the cover is, she has a year to live, unless they kill her first, which is kind of cool. It was the simplest commercial in the world, and most of the good ones are. Lupica and I, we did like about 9. They're fun. They're very funny. But once again, we just, we sat down, we did them for nothing. We did we recorded all of them, shot them all in about an hour and 15 minutes. It's not that complicated. 12 Months to Live, and I could lie about the books, but it's really, really, really engaging. And we're always looking for Yellowstone, something. What's good? Is there a streamer I should watch? Is there, whatever? And mostly no. And it's going to get worse because nobody's shooting anything. So if you're getting your enjoyment from television or the movies, it's going to get dry. 12 Months to Live is real. It's just one of those books you go, that was so cool. I got to tell somebody because it was a fun.
Is it safe to assume you two already have sequels in the works?
The way it's going to happen is you got 12 months to live this year. Next year, you got 8 months to live. The year after, 4 months to live. I don't think anybody's done that before, where you actually do a series that, really? And you're going to knock off this like best character you ever created after the third book? Yeah. The more crazy it sounds, the more I'm interested. Yeah.
We understand you have a posthumous collaboration coming up with none other than Michael Crichton.
I just finished a book. Michael Crichton's estate came to me a while back, and he had written about 60 pages of a novel about Hawaii, about this incredible volcano there. And they said, do you want to finish? I said, well, let me read what he wrote, and I'll see if I want to finish it. And I read it, and I said, that would be really cool. I really like the story. The volcano is threatening to destroy the island of Hawaii, but there's something even worse that's stored there. So it was really a fascinating idea. And I love the challenge of, because Michael Crichton's books, he would hook you with an idea, and then there'd be a lot of science and whatever. And I hadn't done that before. So I thought that would be really a neat challenge. So I went and got a researcher, a volcanist, Elizabeth from Alaska, because she's in Anchorage. And we would go back and forth on what can I do this? And she said, I don't know. Well, maybe you could, if this happened. So that was a cool challenge. So I turned down a lot of things because I go, my heart wouldn't really be in that project. I don't want to do that.
Well, you certainly earned that freedom. Before we run, we'd be remiss if we didn't mine your deep well of wisdom and experience for a few nuggets of gold on how you maintain such a successful and fulfilling run, making a living and difference in your readers' lives with words.
If I'm writing a scene and I'm not feeling it, I don't think the reader will feel it.
Mr. Patterson, it's been an absolute honor talking today. The show would not have been complete without you. Thank you so much for taking out time to be on About the Authors TV.
Bye.